Hello, I'm James Sheard from the Accountancy People, and today I want to talk about the difference in taxation between an LLP, a Limited Liability Partnership, and a limited company. And the reason that I'm interested in this is that the taxation of a limited company has become more similar to an LLP because the imposition of the dividend tax means that people who receive their profits through a limited company now pay more tax. How does it all work? So the way that it works through is that in an LLP, as a basic rate taxpayer, you're actually a little bit worse off because an LLP pays tax at 29% overall, and in a limited company, you pay it at 26.1%. As a high rate taxpayer, it's actually reverses, and in a limited company, you pay 46%, but in an LLP, just 42%, so you're a little bit better off. But those percentages are actually quite close together, so I wouldn't change your structure to take advantage of those really, because there just isn't enough money in it to make the change worthwhile, and who knows, by the time you change it, the government might change the rules again. The main differences in the taxation of limited companies and LLPs come from the treatment of cars, the way that the profits get allocated to the shareholders or the directors. In terms of capital gains, there is a difference in the treatment of capital gains. So if I explain all those three one by one. If you're in a limited company, then unless you have a very environmentally friendly car or you have a commercial vehicle, then it's almost certainly not worth your while having the car in the limited company. So then it depends what sort of car you do have. If you've got a reasonably cheap second-hand or a low-value car or a normal car, then just claiming 45 pence per mile is probably fair. You're probably okay with that, and it's a sensible thing to do. Where it matters more is if you have a very high-value car, or if you do high miles, or one or two other particular circumstances. In that case, it can be difficult to get enough money out of the limited company in a sensible way to make your car reasonable value in terms of tax. In an LLP, the tax treatment is very different, and you have a tax allowance equal to the proportion of the miles that you do for business. So if you've got high business miles and a low personal miles, most of the cost of the car is an allowable expense in an LLP. This is particularly relevant if you have an expensive car, or again, if you do a very low personal miles. So there, in that example, the LLP is generally better for cars than a limited company. The next example where there is a difference is in how the profits get allocated. In a limited company, the limited company is taxed separately to the individual, and the individual only gets taxed on the profits in a limited company when they're paid out as dividends. So the limited company pays corporation tax on all the profits, and then only those that come out as dividends get taxed on the individual shareholder. This means it has a lot of advantages because it means that you control how you pay your tax and when you pay your tax as an individual. So that means, for example, that you can decide whether or not you get the benefit of child benefits, whether your taxable income goes over 100,000, in which case you're going to be paying 60% tax, and if you have high taxable income in one year and low taxable income in the next year, you can manage that through to minimise your tax. And all that is available in a limited company. Whereas in an LLP, it is simple. The profits of the business get taxed on the partners individually, and therefore you have no leeway in terms of if you're retaining profits in the business, or if you've got a good year and then a bad year, you simply pay the tax that's due. It's a very mechanical process. The other thing that I'd like to speak about is the treatment of capital gains tax. Generally, you're a lot better off in an LLP if you've got capital gains. This is because you get a personal allowance for capital gains, and the tax rates are generally lower in an LLP than in a limited company. Because in a limited company you can have double taxation where the company is taxed and then if you distribute the money out of the company, you're taxed again. It can vary if you've got long-term assets such as properties, and if you do have properties in a limited company, or you're thinking of putting properties into a limited company, that's probably a different and slightly more complicated conversation that we need to have. So to conclude, I've discussed the benefits of having an LLP as opposed to a limited company. And in broadly speaking, in an LLP, you have the benefits if you've got cars through it, and there can be benefits if you're putting capital gains through it. But on the other hand, with a limited company, you've got the benefit of great flexibility about how you take the income. And the tax rates can be a little bit different depending on what your income levels are. So I hope that's helpful. If you want to discuss your personal circumstances in greater detail, then please call me. I'm James Sheard at the Accountancy People.